Self-worth is the internal sense of being good enough and being worthy of love and respect. A lot of people have a low sense of self-worth because they think that self-worth is derived from certain external things like achievements and material gains. Self-worth, however, does not depend on your accomplishments or what others think of you. It comes from within. In this video, I'm going to be talking about 10 things that don't determine your self-worth. Coming right up. Crossing off things off your to-do list is definitely a satisfying feeling, but you can't base your sense of worth on the number of things that you cross off your to-do list or even your accomplishments, because if your sense of self-worth does not come from within, you will always seek successes in order to feel good about yourself. And accomplishments or achievements will become like a drug. You will start competing unhealthily. Again, there's nothing wrong with being competitive, with being ambitious, but if you are going to draw your sense of worth from your accomplishments, then you are not in a healthy position. That's not a good state to be in. Feeling proud of your accomplishments is a good thing because you can then feed from that in order to accomplish more things. But the problem starts when you base your entire sense of worth on those accomplishments, because doing so is like building your life on an unstable foundation. Another reason why it's so important not to base your sense of worth on your accomplishments is because in the journey of life you will succeed, but you will also fail. And failure is actually part of the process. It's part of the full journey. So if you are going to base your sense of worth on only the accomplishments, then whenever you fail, you will not learn from that failure. You will see failure as a negative thing, which it actually isn't. Failure is an opportunity to learn. It's an opportunity to grow, but you can only have that perspective if you don't get too attached to your accomplishments. It's okay to celebrate those small wins or those big wins, but don't get stuck in them. Whether it's a win or a loss, you are not defined by all of that. You are way more than the sum total of your losses and wins. Coming in at number 2, your job. No matter the job you have, whether you hate it or love it, it doesn't define who you are as a person. Most people have a tendency of looking down on others or looking down on themselves because of certain jobs that they are doing. But if it pays the bills, if it feeds you, then be proud of it. And the fact that you are doing a certain job, it doesn't mean that's the end or that's your destination. Feel good regardless of the job you are doing. It has nothing to do with your value or your worth as a person. So what if you don't have a million followers on Instagram or Twitter, or 100,000 subscribers on YouTube? In this digital world, it can feel like those numbers determine your value, but the fact that you have a million followers on Instagram doesn't mean that you are more valuable than the person that doesn't even have an Instagram account, or the person that has 10 followers. All it means is that your consistency on those platforms has gained you followers, or maybe they like how you look, maybe they like your content, they like your music, or whatever the case is. But that doesn't make you any better than someone who doesn't have any followers at all, or someone who's still trying to gain those followers. Some of the people that have a huge following on social media at some point had a few followers, and maybe they felt bad because they also defined themselves by those numbers. But to prove that those numbers have nothing to do with who they truly are or what they truly are, over time they gained those numbers and nothing changed in them. Nothing internal changed in them. They've always been the same person. They've always been. The only difference is now, you could say the world is now acknowledging their gift or whatever it is that is drawing people towards their accounts on social media. But that doesn't mean that, this is a better person than what they were or who they were 10 years ago when they had 100 followers. Number 4, your appearance. Now, this one will probably get me into a bit of trouble with my black sisters, but, no offense intended. The beauty industry, hair and beauty industry, is a $1 billion industry. And the biggest contributors to that market are black women. And I could be wrong, but I think the reason why that is because somewhere in history, someone told us as black people that we are not enough, that, the texture of our hair, for instance, is wayward or is not modern or Western. And because of those narratives, it applies to a whole lot of things. I'll just stick to the hair and beauty thing to demonstrate my point. So then that translates into us wanting hair that belongs to other races. Black women spend thousands of rands on hair, just so that they can have that shiny looking hair, that curly hair. Even back in the day, in the 80s, 70s, the 60s, the Jerry curl, that's what they call it in the States. We used to call it IPAM here in SA. It was characterized by that spray and that, what do you call it, that gel, that people would put on their heads. SKL was a big thing at some point. And all of that is basically a culmination of that narrative that said black men or black women, you are not enough. Therefore, you need all these, additions, in order to enhance your beauty. That's why, for instance, even in magazines, it's only now that black beauty is being embraced. But back in the day, or not so long ago, people that were winning beauty pageants were lighter skinned women, lighter skinned black women, because of that same narrative that we adopted or that we carried since then. External appearance or external beauty shouldn't define how you feel about yourself, shouldn't determine your confidence. As you are, regardless of how you look, as you are beautiful, you are lovable, you are worthy of love. And if you want to change anything about how you look or anything about your appearance, do it for yourself, not because you are trying to impress, those magazine editors who told us that, beauty is this and not that. Do it for you. Do it because you like that hair or you like that shade of makeup. I'm not too clued up about those things, so hopefully I'm not messing up here. But my point is, we are all more than the body. We are all more than how we look on the outside. The true person is the one within. And I think that's the ultimate beauty for me. There's nothing as saddening or disappointing as someone who seems beautiful on the outside but is extremely ugly on the inside. And I think if I were to choose between the two, I'd rather be ugly on the outside and be beautiful on the inside, because that's what has real impact. That's what people remember. When you're gone, people will remember how you made them feel, not how you looked. That will just be something that is good for a photograph or those Instagram pages. But when it comes to being a person of impact, being a person that really makes a difference in other people's lives, that has nothing to do with your appearance. Coming in at number 5, other people. Now, this one has to do with not comparing yourself with anyone. We live in a world where we compare ourselves amongst ourselves because maybe we went to school together and 10 years later we are then expected to have achieved a certain level of success, but that's not how life works. You need to manifest in your own lane. We are not all here for the same reason. We all came here to fulfill a different mandate or purpose. Comparing yourself with other people is not smart because you might be comparing someone else's chapter 8 with your chapter 2. Your own life story is still unfolding. Believe that God has a plan for you too. It doesn't matter when your turn comes, but just believe that your turn is also coming, which makes it futile to compare yourself with others because your time has not yet come. And there's a saying I like in isiZulu which says isina muva liyabukwa. He who dances last dances the most, or he who dances last dances the most. God has a tendency of saving the best for last. So if you've been experiencing delays in your breakthrough, it could be a sign that it's because you're carrying something big and God is holding you back for a reason. You are like a showstopper in God's calendar, and it's like, what? Let them shine, but there's something that I'm preparing here. And when the time comes, God will reveal you without delay. That's how I live my life as well. I think at some point I also compared myself with my peers, people that I went to school with, people that I grew up with, and it hurts because sometimes, even our own parents compare us to our peers to say, look at so and so, they are doing so well, what's wrong with you? But what I failed to understand at the time is that I have a unique purpose, and God knows that in order for me to get there, I have to go through a certain process of preparation. And it is in that process that we experience delays. The fact that there's been delays, it doesn't mean that my dream is not real. It doesn't mean that I'm useless. It doesn't mean that I'm here to just watch other people do their thing. All it means is that my time hasn't yet come. Until I got to a point where I found my purpose, I found myself, then I started to understand that, okay, now I understand why that door didn't open. Now I understand why this had to happen. It's because I have a unique purpose. Another analogy that I can think of is if 10 people take a taxi to a particular destination and they each have their own drop-off points, whenever you see someone get off, you can't feel bad because that person has reached their destination. You know that your stop is also coming. It doesn't mean that because this one got off first, they are more important than you. All it means is that they were traveling to a shorter distance. I'm going far and I know that. Therefore, I'm going to chill. I'm just going to relax and trust the journey. When I get to my own place, I would know, and I can't define it right now, but I know that once I get there, I'll be able to say, this is the place I've seen, in my dreams. This is the place I've seen before I even came into this world. Coming in at number 6, your grades or your performance at work. One of the things that I struggled with at school was mathematics. I used to always get very low grades when it comes to that. And I used to feel bad because even though sometimes I tried to apply myself, I just couldn't do well in mathematics. And I remember at some point it got so bad that I started despising school altogether just because of that one subject, and come to think of it now, I think I would have understood mathematics if it was presented differently. That's another thing that I think our system is failing on. Our education system puts everyone in one box, and whoever seems to be a misfit in that box is regarded as stupid or dumb. Albert Einstein said, everyone is a genius, but if you are going to judge a fish by its inability to fly, then it will live its entire life thinking it is stupid. So it's all about, finding your element. It's all about finding a system that talks to your genetic makeup, finding, a vocation that talks to your core. I light up whenever I talk about, principles that govern life. For some reason, I have what I consider the sixth sense when it comes to this. I can just, connect the dots. I can just come up with different analogies to explain some of which may seem to be intricate principles or concepts, but because I was born to do this, it's easy for me, whereas if you give me a mathematical equation, because it's not in line with how my mind was designed, it might seem like I'm dumb, but if you present the very same problem in a way that talks to how I was designed, how my mind works, then I'll be able to solve that. So how you are doing at school has nothing to do with who you are as a person. You might just be a fish. You might just be a fish trying to fly, or you might just be a bird trying to swim. That's all it is. And even at work, they have KPIs or IPAs. If you are an average performer there, it doesn't define you. It doesn't mean that you are less of a person than someone who's a so-called consistent performer. Maybe it's because this is in line with, what they are good at. That's why they're acing it. And without taking away from, the human will, I also believe that you can achieve anything if you put your mind to it. But I'm just saying that sometimes, people are compared in work settings, in school, and whoever is not meeting this yardstick is then considered to be less of a person. And I think people then take that and grow up with it. It starts becoming a complex inferiority complex because, at school I struggled with this. Now at work I'm struggling with this. People build a narrative, a very false narrative based on all those things. Coming in at number 7, your friends, or the number of friends you have. I'm one of the people that have very few friends. I don't know, maybe there's something wrong with me. But the number of friends you have doesn't define you. It doesn't sort of dictate your sense of worth. It doesn't mean that someone who has 10 friends is more worthy of love or respect than someone who has only 2 friends, And personally, I feel that, the smaller your inner circle, the better, because for me, friendship has to be meaningful. Friendship has to be sort of helping me towards my purpose. So if I have 20 friends that I consider to be my close friends, then it can get messy because they have their own purpose. Everyone has their own purpose. Now, if you have too much of a large pool of friends, I think it can get in the way of your focus. It can get in the way of, zooming into your vision. I seldom connect with people, but when I do, it's real. I've got friends that I have been friends with for years, and it's not even a lot of them. It's about two or three friends that I can say, these are my friends. I obviously have people I know, people I work with, people I've met throughout my journey, but I wouldn't necessarily call them friends in the sense that, they are in my close circle. I don't know if there's such a thing as a distant friend or a work friend, but yeah, I think we all have something like that. But when it comes to the circle, people who you talk to when you don't know what to do, when you're in real trouble, then that's a very small circle. Number 8, your relationship status. This is another interesting one. I've seen a lot of people go into another relationship too quickly after a breakup because they are afraid of being alone. And I think a big part of that stems from the fact that somehow they associate being in a relationship to worth or value. Their narrative, or maybe the story in their minds is, if I'm if I'm single, then no one wants me. If I'm single, maybe there's something wrong with me. But there's no such thing. Every season serves. So if God puts you in a season of being alone, embrace that and say, what am I to learn in this season? Sometimes we move into another relationship too quickly after a toxic one, or after a relationship where we had to learn certain things. We move too quickly into the next one without really reflecting on what went wrong in the previous relationship, and also before we could find ourselves in terms of what we want in the next relationship. That is why most people tend to sell themselves short, where they settle for partners who treat them like second best. They settle for partners who don't appreciate them because they didn't take the time to firstly understand their own worth in order for them to have a solid foundation when they move in, when they start a new relationship. Because if you don't know your worth, it's very difficult for you to then force or convince someone else to appreciate you, because you don't know your own worth. So you can't expect people to respect something that is not projected. So the fact that you are single, or the fact that you are in a relationship, doesn't define you. If you are in a relationship, it doesn't make you more valuable than someone who is single, and vice versa. All these are seasons of life that are part of your journey of learning. Every season serves, like I said. There's lessons to be learned while you are single. There's lessons to be learned while you are in a relationship. And none of those seasons define you. Number 9, your money in the bank. I was listening to a podcast earlier, and there was an artist, a famous local artist, who was talking about her journey, and she was basically saying that, she appreciates her journey because the days when she didn't have money to go to the studio, she didn't have money to feed her family, make this moment even more beautiful, because now she's in what you would call her summer, the summer of her journey. Now she has received her breakthrough. Now she can afford to take care of her family through her talent, and she thought that during the times when she couldn't, make ends meet, she was less of a person. Yet that was not true. She was just going through the process. She had to go through the process of preparation. And she's the same person now that she was in then. She may have changed slightly physically, and maybe her public profile may have changed, but the internal being, the internal person, the real person is still the same. So this whole thing about understanding your self-worth and it being an internal thing really has to do with the soul. It's a soul thing. Whether you have money or not, you are still worthy of love and respect. Whether you have a job or not, you are still worthy of love and respect. Whether you have achieved your dreams or not, you are still valuable. You are still worthy of regard. You are still worthy of honor by virtue of you being a human being. And lastly, number 10, the things you own. Someone who owns a Ferrari, or who owns a house on the beach in Cape Town or in Miami, is not more valuable or more important or more worthy of respect than someone who lives in a shack or than someone who lives on the streets. Those external things, those material gains don't define you. That's why when you die, you live as you are. You don't take your Ferrari with, you don't take your house with. And as much as, growing as a person and achieving at different levels is a good thing. We were created to progress. There's nothing wrong with owning a Ferrari. There's nothing wrong with owning a beautiful home. The problem comes when we draw our sense of self, our sense of worth from those things. That's why, some people lose their minds, or they go mad when they lose things, when they lose their houses, when they divorce. That's because they linked their sense of worth to a relationship, to a car, to a house, to a Rolex, to an iPhone. But those things mean nothing, they are fleeting. It's good to enjoy the things that you worked hard for. It's good to, bask in the sun of your success. But don't define yourself by the things you own. And don't look down on people who have less than you, because everyone is on a journey. It could be them today, it could be you tomorrow. Because there was once a time when you also didn't have much, but over the process of time, you accumulated things, and those things didn't add to your core. Those things didn't add to, the inner you. They just added to your external life. They only added to your comfort, to your level of affordability, but they didn't add to the core human being. And that brings us to the end of the video. Thanks again for watching. If you liked it, please like, share, and comment. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, and hit that notification bell as well so that you can be notified every time I upload new content. Until next time, goodbye.